when I'm not busy convincing my therapist that it was a great idea to spend 1,000 hours making a YouTube cartoon. I like to answer questions that I get, so let's get to it. Hey Sean, this is Aniket from India. I learn guitar and I'm also a teacher. I teach elementary guitar. I followed your videos about all the intermediate chords, but I don't understand how to really grow out of using only open and bar chords and incorporate all of the other chords into our playing. I'd really appreciate it if you could guide me with it. Hope I have made my question clear. P.S. Love your videos and your sense of humor. So thank you for the support as always, and I think that's like a really common thing. It's like, everybody kind of learns the same open chords at first, and then you kind of make the connection that you can make these chords in different places around the neck. Like instead of playing like an A minor, you play A minor bar chord, stuff like that. Then maybe the next step is to think of extended chords, and then maybe take an A minor, make it an A minor 7, right? And then the question is, it's like, well, when do I use these other chords, and how do I incorporate them into my playing? And I really think the key to it is intervals, because behind any piece of music, no matter how it's played, there are always chords behind them, and intervals are just the spaces in between notes to kind of make chords special, right? So if you wanted to take like an A minor and then make it an A minor 7, it's one thing to just kind of thoughtlessly turn it into an A minor 7 just because. It's like, why do you want to do that? Maybe you see the A here in a bar chord, and when you lift your pinky up to make it an A minor 7, you get that minor 7 interval. So I think that thinking in intervals when you're playing chords, when you're playing solos or anything, can really help out. Like if you just have like a regular progression, like maybe like an A minor to a C to a G, right, in an open chord position. If you want to incorporate some of the bar chords and then use some of those scales, because scales and modes are the best way to really see all the intervals off of a root note, you can do some cool stuff. Like instead of just playing like, I might start with like an A minor, and then get into like an A minor bar chord position, and know that like the scale or the shape is behind there, so then you can kind of inflect that chord with an interval, like a minor 7 interval, go down to the octave, into it, and then go to like this C into the G, right? So even though I wasn't playing a C major and a G major chord, I was thinking C major by getting into this C major shape and hitting like an interval that I thought was cool, which is like a major 7 here, and then when I get to the G, instead of thinking G major, I'm thinking of G's shape in the key of C, which is this Mixolydian shape. And then I know I can grab the 3rd and the 7 into this, and then I kind of just, move it around. And then you can kind of like really, I think, develop a much cleaner sense of melody and how they relate to chords. So I'm a big fan of thinking of the intervals in chords and kind of approaching scales and modes in that way, because then you know that like, okay, I'm in a bar chord shape. What do I want to do here? I want to really add that minor 7 on the A. Then when I get to the C, I want to add the major 7. And then when I want to get to the G, I want to get that dominant 7, that flat 7 type thing in there. So I've got videos on all the different shapes and the modes and stuff like that. The stuff with Justin and Ian I'm doing about arpeggios and modes are 2 different ways to come at it. But I definitely think that thinking of intervals is a great way to get out of just switching between open chords and bar chords. How do you know if you're getting your money's worth from a guitar teacher? What are some of the basics that he or she should teach? My teacher is song, scale, solo bass. I'd rather do rhythm. I think I'm one of the only rock dudes he teaches. Yeah, so I think I can speak to this because I've been a teacher for a long time now, and I think every student learns differently. Some people really like learning through scales. Other people can't touch them. They just kind of, their eyes glaze over as soon as you start talking about them, so you got to do more song-based stuff. So I think that every teacher should be versatile. Like, I'm all for, like, teaching the basics, obviously, but I think a good teacher can kind of see what a student wants to do and then kind of maybe make a program geared towards what they want to learn. And that's definitely something that I try to do. Like if they just want to learn songs, we're just doing songs, and then I try to sneak the basics in there. Like if it's a song that, it's like, okay, a G7 to a C. It's like, well, we knew that C was coming because the G7 is like, the 5 chord dominant stuff, stuff like that. Just kind of like sneak the theory into them, because I would say the majority of the students don't really want to learn theory and maybe some of the basics or the fundamental music building blocks right away. So I think a good teacher strikes a good balance of still covering the bases there, but not making it so boring that it's like, okay, here's your book, do the first chapter or whatever. That's a very like old school way of teaching. So again, I would never want to say that somebody's teaching somebody the wrong way, but if you're taking lessons, or maybe if you're teaching yourself, one thing to think about is definitely try to pattern what you're doing, or try to be very vocal about what your goals are to your teacher. And if you've explained to them that this is what you want to learn style wise, and after explaining that to them and being like real upfront with them, if they can't kind of tailor the lessons to what you want to do, then maybe it is time to try something else. Maybe find somebody else, because Lord knows I'm not the best teacher for everybody. I've had students where we started, and then I graduated them because they wanted to learn a style that I knew that there was somebody that was way better at that style and that could teach them better than I could. So I think most music teachers are pretty cognizant of that fact. So really just it might seem kind of awkward to be like, listen, I don't feel like I'm getting the most out of these lessons, but just be real with them, and I feel like you guys will have a good dialogue, and then you can kind of take it from there. Great. Ever thought of doing some sessions on the art and craft of songwriting? So this question is in response to one of the videos of the album that I posted with the accompanying cartoons that I'm rolling out. And I definitely think that at some point this year, I'm going to do more like kind of songwriting courses or videos geared on kind of the art of songwriting. But in the meantime, I am going to try to do video lessons for all the songs that I'm posting, and within those lessons I'm talking about kind of my philosophy on why I kind of did certain things. So if you're interested in that at all, even if it's maybe like a riff or something you don't feel like you need to learn how to play, I do try to cover kind of some of the basics of songwriting that I'm thinking about in these videos, so definitely stay tuned for those. Congrats on the new album, Sean. It might be a personal question, but how do you make a living being a musician? Do you have any side jobs, or is YouTube and music your full-time career? Yeah, I've definitely been doing this full-time for a few years now, and I guess, some people wouldn't consider like having teaching being a main part of what I do as being like a musician, but I mean, I do, I feel like I kind of, at least half of what I do is teaching. So I teach like 25, 30 lessons a week, and I kind of try to cap it right there, because anything above that, I start forgetting people's names. I have no idea what we've been working on. I feel like 25, 30 a week, I can remember at this point anyways, like what we've been working on and kind of like what everybody's goals are and stuff like that. But yeah, being a full-time musician is it's definitely a lot of hustle, and I don't turn down a whole lot of stuff. I mean, I guess I do now a little bit. Like back in the day, I would just do like anything. Like I'd do anything for money, whatever. But nowadays, I can be a little more selective with the projects that I choose. But a lot of that is just because I feel like I've been in this area and I've been doing it long enough that I have like a good client base of teaching. And then I supplement that with like the YouTube stuff. I do like recording stuff for like local people around town. I do some like video and like editing stuff like that too. But I'm always just down to like try new things and try to expand what I'm doing. So it's definitely a lot of hustle. And if it's something you're interested in, really my best advice is to just network as much as you possibly can. Because whether it's playing gigs, or if it's teaching, or it's just kind of like, getting side jobs, music related, like sound stuff, it's all about who you know. And the more tapped in you are to the community, the easier it's going to be for you to hustle and make a living as a musician. Because, I mean, I've said it before, it's like the greatest job in the world. And, I think that's why I kind of geared more of what I do towards teaching than playing, because the gigging lifestyle is much less steady, and it's just kind of, to me, it wasn't as fun as just kind of like, really getting to know my students. All my students are awesome. I love the job. So definitely, if you're interested in it, just start, networking, get your name out there, and then just any opportunity that comes along, just grab it for the experience, even if you're not getting paid a lot of money, and eventually, hopefully, you'll be able to make a career out of it. There seems to be so many good musicians when looking on YouTube, and hell, even some are at my school. With so many good musicians around, it would seem some would get together to create killer bands or ensembles. But from what I've seen, there aren't that many. What do you think of this? Do you think I'm exaggerating, that it's all in my head? Just wanted to hear what you thought. This is a really good point, because I agree there are an incredible amount of musicians out there, but there is not a proportionate amount of good bands out there. And from what I've learned, what makes a good band isn't necessarily about the individual skill and talent of each musician in the band. And I mean, I've seen it firsthand, like a lot of times where you'll get a bunch of great musicians together and they just don't vibe and they don't gel and they all do their own thing. But I would almost rather listen to them do like their instrument solo than meshing with a group. So much of a band is just kind of like everybody putting their ego aside and doing like what's right for the band, and kind of like just having like a synergy between them. So I think like that kind of chemistry is something that I found is somewhat rare, and I've kind of been involved in cases where like I feel like I'm really like meshing with other musicians, and other times it's just kind of like a chore, like really just kind of like dial it back. Because I think once you get to like a certain level of musicianship, there is kind of like an ego thing where like you want to be doing the best that you could do, like the most that you can do all the time. So to really find like a solid group of guys or girls that like really understand that, because I think the only way to understand that is through experience. So to find like a bunch of experienced musicians that totally get that, I think is more rare than just being able to find a bunch of great musicians and put them in the same spot. So there's really something to like the utility guy musician who doesn't need a lot of shine, doesn't need a lot of spotlight, just kind of like knows the role within a band and allows the band to write their material or do their stuff around that. But that being said, there's so much great talent out there that I think, you really just kind of have to look for it. Like in any, city in the world, there's great musicians, and a lot of times they're playing like at restaurants and stuff like that. So I think if you go out and kind of pay attention more, you'll probably will see more incredibly talented people than you might even think exist out there. What do you think about Beck? I love Beck. I think he's probably the artist more so than any other that has been able to successfully evolve through the times and still stay kind of fresh. Like anything from, I think Sea Change is probably my favorite album. Morning Phase is fantastic. It's kind of like, I think they call it like the sequel to that one. I think it won like Best Album of the Year like 2 years ago. I don't know about that, but it's definitely great. He's a little hit or miss with me on some of the other stuff. Like Guerra has kind of like a special place in my heart where I'm not totally down with it, but every time I hear some of the intros to those songs, like the drum machine loops, it's just kind of like puts a smile on my face. So I love Beck, and I really appreciate the stuff he does. I think he's like a true creative artist, kind of like the project he did a few years back where instead of making an album, he just wrote the songs and kind of like gave like the sheet music out there and had other people make the album for him. I thought that was an incredible idea. And I'm always interested to hear what he's got coming out next, because I think what he showed with the last record was that he's just like so mature and confident as an artist, and it's good to hear that. I think he's getting better. He had that like back injury and stuff that he was kind of out of commission for a while. But yeah, definitely a huge Beck fan, and I love the newest stuff, and Sea Change 2, great album. So for listening homework, we're going to go to what I think is my favorite Beck song at the moment, Volcano. It's just got like a sneaky cool like meandering guitar part, and the arrangement is just fantastic. Lyrically, it's a really cool song too. So definitely check that out, and any questions or comments you have, let me know what you think in the comments below or on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.